Hello, everyone, and welcome to another SDGC review discussion. I'm Derek, and I'm joined by John and Finn. What's going on, guys?
I'm not here.
Okay.
I guess we just won't know how either of you are doing.
Hey, I said I'm great. I don't know what this John fella's up to.
This is an elaborate, highly advanced AI based on John.
Well, we don't believe in AI around these parts, so show us how many fingers you have.
Also, write a word on screen that doesn't look like it got smeared by some raindrops.
How many L's are in the word marshmallow?
52.
Folks.
Look, there's my perfectly normal hand.
Yeah, this is my T-Rex claw. We are here today to talk about Fantasian Neo Dimension, which the wonderful folks at Square Enix were kind enough to provide us with a couple of codes for. We received a code on Steam and a code on Switch. I played on PC, John played on Switch, and Finn...
No one even told me about a second code. Whoa.
Well,
I defer to Derek for the first one.
Finn, I believe you played the original on mobile, correct?
Yeah, you played the original, Finn. What are you complaining
Well, that
about?
means he would be in a good position to talk about how it's different, maybe.
Oh, so. I would say so. I'm an OG Apple Arcade sicko.
Yeah.
I mean, John would never, lower himself to play a mobile game, but you tell me Sakaguchi's coming back to
a big deal.
Story-based Japanese role-playing game, and I'm gonna go, hell yeah, I'll buy a Backbone and play on my TV.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, oh, sorry, you go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say there's nothing I hate more than playing a game on my phone.
So for those who don't know, Fantasian first released as an Apple Arcade exclusive, I think in 2 parts, right, Finn?
Correct. It was 2 parts.
And it was Hironobu Sakaguchi and why am I blanking on? Yeah, Uematsu returning to work on a more traditional RPG in the vein of some classic Final Fantasies, with Mistwalker, and that
with the cool.
I was just gonna say, and that game, the Apple Arcade game, got picked up by Square Enix and heavily remastered and reworked, rebalanced. I believe the voice acting is all new, correct? And a bunch of other like touches and cleanups and improvements. And that has been re-released on basically every platform under the sun as Fantasian Neo Dimension. Finn, you were saying something.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and one of the, besides the fact that it's a Sakaguchi game, one of the coolest things that first drew me to this was the fact that every environment is made from an actual diorama that he built himself, he and his team built.
Yeah.
And it lends it to an incredible visual like aesthetic that kind of reminds me of the PS1 era, like fixed camera rendered backgrounds.
Yes. So that is the thing.
We were talking about this earlier.
We have all like I did a stream of the first hour of the game, and I looked up as little as possible at Fantasian. I almost turned my eyes away when trailers were on screen during presentations. Right, I wanted to go into this as ignorant as possible, so I didn't really know what I was getting into, and lo and behold, it is so much a throwback to the PS1 era of Final Fantasy, so specifically with the static backgrounds and the moving around and like getting masked out when you go behind an object.
It specifically reminded me of Final Fantasy VIII regarding the character models.
In a lot of ways,
fully sized, no squat, blocky characters,
right?
Well,
but even the way that like the backgrounds are like Finn said, they built dioramas of all of these locations and then just took a bunch of photos, a bunch of extremely high quality photos with like a tilt shift lens to give it that macro effect. So it has like a little bit of a toyetic look. And when you move to like a boundary and the camera shifts, like it's shifting, it's not like a 3D scan that it's moving through. It's shifting from one flat image to another with like a clever warping. But it looks so slick, and it's an intentional artistic choice to recapture that energy. And I love that as a first. What am I trying to say? Like the first impression was so impactful to me because we've talked a lot. All three of us have gone on about this wonderful era of like retro inspired, like retro JRPG inspired indie RPGs coming out. Tons of like Super Nintendo era inspired RPGs.
Our game was inspired by Chrono Trigger, like times 50.
Right.
Like,
and to be fair, many of them have been very good, but
many of them have.
But this, like the thing is, I missed the Super Nintendo era of RPGs, right? Like I'm younger than y'all. So I just missed that.
Yeah.
I'm 33, right? Like I was born in 1991.
And I'm 34.
I was 7 when Final Fantasy VIII came out. You know what I mean?
Sucks to be you. Finn and I enjoyed the GOAT era.
I went back and got to, and it is a fantastic era. But like for me, while I played the original Final Fantasy on NES,
on the NES,
yeah, playing Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 on the PS1 was really what pulled me into RPGs, or at least into like the Japanese like concept of RPGs as they were hitting the consoles of, home consoles of the time. Cause I'd played a few older PC RPGs, but that's neither here nor there. So this was that moment for me that I hear you all talk about all the time of like, this is something that captured my nostalgia, and that brought me in very high. So, now I want to turn it over to Finn first, because I'm very curious about your experiences with the original version of Fantasian.
Okay. Before
we talk about maybe how that's changed some with this console port.
I mean, I'm going to be real. The only real change I recall or even noticed was that as a whole, I mean, it runs really well on console, and the voice acting.
Right? Oh, have you also played it on consoles?
Yeah, I'm not finished with it yet, but
okay.
I have been dabbling with it. I got it on Switch.
Gotcha. Okay, so you've been playing it on Switch. I've been playing it on PC. You've also played it on mobile, and John beat it on Switch. So
I actually I need to slightly disagree with Finn on something. I think generally it runs pretty okay on the Switch. There's some stutter here and there, which is negligible. Like my real issue with performance on the Switch are the load times, which are egregious.
You said going into like battles, right?
Going into battles, the load times can get up to 6 or 7 seconds. I've sat there and counted, and it is not okay. There is no.
I love Final Fantasy 9. I'm not allowed to say anything.
Yeah, I'm like I don't even think I really clicked that was a thing, because I'm just.
It's definitely much zippier on PC
that do that I don't even notice.
It's much faster on PC. That wait does not exist in the same way on PC hardware, but
it just takes forever to get into a battle.
It's kind of interesting because it's not necessarily a super graphically intensive game, right?
No, it's not. Like, I mean, it is a beautiful game.
Yeah, I like the art style, but like we're talking about flat background images and like character models and effects that are not unreasonable to see on the Switch. So
yeah, so I don't understand why the load times are what they are. No, a patch came out about maybe a week ago, and I fired it up to see if maybe this would address some of the loading times on Switch, and as far as I can tell, it did not. I'm not saying don't play it on Switch. In fact, I think this game, Finn would agree, I think based on its mobile origins, I think this game is perfect for a handheld device.
Right. To be fair, almost every console that you choose to play on has a mobile option now.
I mean, Steam Deck, we're getting
Portal,
there.
Or a Switch.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, and I think like if you're going to play it mobile, honestly, I would recommend getting it on PlayStation if you have a PlayStation Portal and doing that. The Switch or getting it on Steam, and like if you got a Steam Deck, do that. If all you have is a Switch and you really want it on Switch, it's not a bad experience on Switch. Just be aware that the load times can be a little aggravating if you are sensitive to that sort of thing, which I am.
To be fair, I think I get the feeling that the target audience's game is people who were around for the PS1 era. Which is not to say that people who weren't around for it won't find a lot to love in this game, but if you were there for Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, you can handle a 5 to 8 second load time for every fight. I
So
love.
if I may, when you're done, I have something else to throw in.
No, why don't you go ahead? Because I was going to jump into mechanical stuff that I really like about the game. But if yours is,
I was just going to say, like,
bridge.
there are other additions to this game that were not present in the arcade version.
Yeah,
that I appreciated. Most notably, like the new difficulty options. To tweak your experience based on your personal play style. Like, I think that should always be the case. But for me, I really loved like the Final Fantasy music player. Like, such a silly, unnecessary addition, but it gave me Final Fantasy 15 car vibes where you could just change the music to a Final Fantasy of your choice.
It's kind of an interesting feature, but I also Uematsu's score is so good. I like.
Oh, I know.
Don't want to.
Yeah,
it is so good on its own, but it's just really cool sometimes when you're just kind of like slogging through some giant 50 monster battles.
Yeah,
but the choice of Final Fantasy music is a little weird to me. like it was some.
I didn't look at any of them, so I don't know.
It's like it's not all of the. It's maybe like a handful of the games and a handful of tracks.
Well, yeah.
And like
it's not designed to be like comprehensive,
right? But
just
right. But what I'm saying is like the music from Final Fantasy 16. I don't think fits the slower paced battles of Fantasian Neo Dimension. That being said, it's a cool feature. I think it's cool that it's there. But I thought Uematsu's score was so good that I didn't really want to. Like if I want to hear Final Fantasy 16 play in the background, I'll go play Final Fantasy 16. I wanted to kind of let the new experience speak for itself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So I think describing Fantasian as like a modern, cleaned up take on a PS1 era Final Fantasy already puts most people in the right mindset for what they should be expecting. I think it's really easy to talk about Fantasian because for me, I think there's two big like winners of things I truly love about Fantasian, and there's one thing that's a little rough. Number one, I love it from a like gameplay battle mechanic perspective. I love the way that so many attacks and abilities are like require you to think spatially because you can attack in like lines or like arc your spells to hit multiple enemies or do like area of effects. So you end up thinking about where enemies are positioned in battle and where your characters are positioned and work with that. I think that's very neat. I love the Dimension, right? Is this mechanic that lets you like store up and stockpile random encounters.
I love it so much.
I love it.
I especially the dumb name.
It's so dumb.
Classic RPG.
Yeah.
I never
naming
used
a mechanic some dumb mishmash portmanteau.
I think you missed out not using it, John.
Yeah, you really.
I just never found a need for it.
Well, it's nice to stockpile like 30 or 40 enemies from encounters and then just burn through them all at once in one kind of involved fight, but also where your area of effect abilities can hit like more enemies, so it's like more efficient for grinding in a lot of ways.
And not only that, but I really think those battles, especially once you've gathered up a huge chunk, really highlight the more tactical vibes of some of the Fantasian battle systems, like arcing attacks and like trying to hit as many people as you can.
Dealing with enemies that block attacks.
I loved curving spells.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And it's so cool. Much more satisfying when you have like
with spells.
40 people on screen and you're just fucking like...
And you're like, can I also hit this buff crystal so that I can give my whole party attack up? Can I get that in there?
It turned grinding and just like battling minor enemies. And John, I mean, maybe that's why I didn't notice the load times as much, because I'm stockpiling enemies. So instead of doing a fight 50 times, I'm doing one fight.
Yeah.
And fighting 50 enemies.
Which is really, again, how the game is meant to be played. Like, you're given the dimension. It is a core mechanic. And it's turned on by default, and it assumes you're going to keep it on. And you have to take steps to turn it off. Like it's narratively like a thing that comes up alongside that warp device, right?
Yeah, I just chose not to use it.
Yeah. Very John Core. So like one thing I love is like that, right? Those mechanics of battle make it very engaging in terms of like boss fights, right? And it plays with mechanics and gimmicks and boss fights in a way that like classic Final Fantasy used to, and I really love. Here's a weird griffin enemy that summons little electric enemies that will charge it up, right? And if it gets too charged up, it casts an ability that moves you backward. And if it gets to cast it too many times, it's a party wipe, right? Like very PS1 era Final Fantasy type of boss.
Yeah.
I love the characters, right? The characters have this very arch, like, man, it's been a while since I got some Sakaguchi ass characters, right? And these some Sakaguchi ass characters.
There's some Sakaguchi characters. Like they really hit them all. I will say that I think that, you know, for as beautiful as the backgrounds are, I felt that the character models kind of
they clash a little bit, but
it was a little bit of a clash. Like it's nothing egregious, but
yeah.
But I do almost wish that they had able to like, and Finn, you tell me what you think, but I wish they had been able to like replicate that diorama feel a little more in the characters. I understand why they didn't.
Make the characters look a little more toyetic, maybe. Like
yeah, that would have been so fucking cool. And again, not the big, far from the biggest deal in the world.
I don't know how I'd feel about that, honestly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The characters more toy-ish.
You know what?
I feel like then we just be getting like Kingdom Hearts and Toy Story World vibes.
Do you guys remember Diofield Chronicle?
I do.
Right?
Yes.
Where like the
no
character
does,
models,
but I do.
yeah, where the character models felt weirdly Square Enix. See, we bring games up.
Yeah.
The character models had this weirdly toyetic feel to them for reasons I did not understand.
Yeah,
the like in between base segments, right? Where you're in like this totally normally rendered environment and the characters feel like dolls.
And I think part of that is the scaling.
Yeah.
Like if you even just to confirm my own thoughts, if you go and like type it in and look at images, like the people are as tall as the buildings in the battle scenes. And I think that makes it look like you're playing with figures in a diorama itself.
Yeah. It's yeah, and that's the thing is I think I would worry it would be difficult to do that with the character models in Fantasian, without maybe crossing that weird boundary, right? But I think it works. Basically, there's a little bit of an aesthetic clash, but I think it works. But I love these characters. They're big. They're arch. They have big personality traits that set them all very, very much apart. These are not written to be grounded, normal people. Yeah, basically, yeah.
He can't help himself.
But they're larger than life, and they fulfill like stage roles, and I love that. It's a thing where I do not say this to dismiss more recent Final Fantasy games going for these more grounded, like well-rounded characters who fit like a believable spectrum of normal people. But like Final Fantasy 16 has a bunch of normal people dealing with political plots, and then Fantasian brings you back to like bigger than life. And I really like that for what it's trying to do. I want to know who all of y'all's favorite character was.
I'm a Leo purist.
Leo's a fun protagonist. I'm going to be honest. He's got a little sass to him.
I don't know. I'd have to say probably Zinniker.
Yeah, you would be a Zinniker fan.
You would be. That's surprising no one.
Yeah.
You chose the grizzled older guy.
Big, powerfully built older guy. Like, like that's just, I mean, let's face it, right? Like I'm older than most Final Fantasy Cids at this point. So, that's kind of where I'm at in my life right now. I would probably consider myself the Cid of this podcast.
I would give that to you. Specifically Final Fantasy 4, but
no, I would say 7. Finn. Like I'm grumpy as shit most of the time, and I
It's
swear a
my
lot.
my answer's funnier, so I'm gonna stick with it.
That's fine. You can do that. But yeah, no, I think Zinniker, like just because he's very tropey, but it's also very like it's tropey in a way that is very satisfying. Again, like it ties back to that classic JRPG feel of like, we've got all our party tropes here. We got the young male protagonist, we've got the female love interest, we've got the older grizzled man, who's kind of a guide but also angry, and then we've got like the robot.
Yeah.
And like so
we got the plucky, annoying kid,
there.
thief, inventor
Yeah.
character.
Yep.
And I love Zinniker and Ez, and their dynamic, right, is very fun. You get like the old guy and the whippersnapper constantly bickering at each other, right? I really liked Cheryl, the princess that you get very early on. Cheryl,
Which I love. I have a quick aside. Sorry.
Okay, no, I want to hear your aside.
It's almost funny to me that in these types of games that the weirder name is the one that's just a normal person name.
Yeah.
Like here's Leo and Zinniker, and also
And
Cheryl's
Ez, and then
here.
Cheryl.
Like
Cheryl,
from HR is here.
Yeah.
But
It's just-
Cheryl's
it always stands out way more. Like
Yeah.
if you have Cloud and Titus, and then here's Jacob,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, it's like my RPGs. My RPG character's name is Thaddeus Boltthroat, and then I've got fucking I've got like Emily.
Hate that.
Like
Hate that.
hated that.
Sorry, but by the way, Derek, you are now known as Thaddeus Boltthroat. So
Thaddeus Boltthroat. He's been smoking 12 packs a day for 30 years. But I love, and can I also say one thing that was really refreshing to me coming into this, right? Like one of my biggest criticisms of the last couple of major of Final Fantasy 15 and 16, right, is like, man, it's all about the boys. And Final Fantasy used to be better about its women characters, and like 15 and 16 have both struggled in that regard. And Fantasian, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but like 2 of your 3 first like party characters you get are women with like extremely recognizable personality traits, like that don't feel like too stock or too interchangeable. They have an interesting dynamic of their own. It's that, and also the initial villain of the game, Vam the Malevolent.
Vincent the Malevolent
is such a like charismatic, like well-designed, like classic JRPG villain right out of the gate.
In fact, I will say that I actually, so like it's no secret that like Vam is not the final villain. I mean, we're talking about a game that's a couple years old now. I actually felt that Vam was
It's
stronger
not a couple
antagonist.
years old for most people though, so I would like to keep most spoilers.
No, I'm not going on. But what I will say is, what comes after Vam, I don't think is anywhere near as compelling as Vam himself.
But isn't that also classic Final Fantasy?
It is. We joked yesterday on the show that it's like I haven't beaten the game.
It's right up there.
But
with,
I know I'm gonna get Cloud of Darkness at the end, right? Because it's a Final Fan. It's like it's a Sakaguchi game. Like,
it's strong Necron from Final Fantasy 9 vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same deal.
You don't get. It's not quite the jump. It's not quite the jump scare at the very end, but yeah, it's more. I would compare it to Final Fantasy IV, Derek.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because I straight up said Vam is like a Golbez type, right? Where like he is so, or like a Kuja, where he really commands the spotlight as the like villain, whether or not he's the final thing you fight in the game. Like he drives the plot, and I love him as a villain. What a great character.
I really liked him in Final Fantasy VII also.
Shut up.
He looks like Vincent. What do you want me to say?
Vincent comes from a long Vincent's just like Magus, really, right? Like the anime pretty boys, usually with elf ears, is like such a thing in Japanese like fantasy RPGs.
So
Oh, you
go
sorry,
ahead,
you
Derek. I'm sorry.
I was
No,
going to
no, no,
move
no,
on
no,
to
no,
the
no, no.
thing that's been weak for me, but if you've got more things you love, I want to
Please.
hear it.
No. Go ahead.
What
Go
about
ahead.
you, Finn? Are there
let's
more
touch on
like
that.
things you love that you want to bring up that we haven't touched on yet?
I mean, we briefly touched about the battle system.
If you got
and
more to
the
say,
dioramas. No, I mean, like it's just it doesn't try and reinvent the wheel, but the mechanics it adds, I think, just we never really talked about how you can on mobile. It was so much more tactile. Like I think that loses something in the translation to traditional controls, but arcing spells and angling your attacks on the curve with your finger is just super satisfying.
See, that's the thing is like you're using the stick on the modern ports, but you can tell that it was a thing that you were meant to like trace out, and like, oh, that would have been really fun. That would have been really fun, but it's okay. Yeah, I really enjoy so much about this game. Where it's a little weak for me. There's a couple things, and one of them is like nitpicky, but when you notice it, you're gonna notice it. And that is visually there's a little bit of mess. And you notice from very early on that like sometimes you walk behind things and your foot do be like poking through the thing that you're supposed to be behind, because the masking in the environment so that you walk behind something even though it's a flat 2D image is kind of sloppily done. And it's much more noticeable, I think, on a bigger screen than it was on like your phone back in the day.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
You know,
one thing that I found irritating, Derek, and you and I talked about this, and Finn, you tell me if you'd experienced something similar, but and I never played it on mobile. I've only played it on console, so maybe this is just a console thing. But the way those maps are situated, when you're walking in a certain direction and it changes perspective on you, all of a sudden Leo just runs off into fucking
that
nowhere.
too. Yeah,
and
that's another holdover from that era that I did not miss.
Yeah, I understand that they need to do it so that you don't immediately just go like blah, 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 depending on how the camera shifts. I wish he would go for like a second and then it would reorient to the way you're holding the stick.
Well, like I had to train myself to just let go of the thumbstick for a minute,
because otherwise you'd be holding
like,
up and then up would suddenly be left, and then if you move the stick left, he's going down, and
it gets it gets like not a deal breaker, but it does get irritating after a while.
Yeah,
because like, I'm running in one direction, it shifts, and Leo's like, "Nope, I'm going north." I'm like, I'm like, Leo, stop. Come back.
That's another annoyance, but like again, one you get over, right? You just get the patented let go of the stick for a second every time you switch camera angles.
Yeah.
The real weak spot to me is the characters, and again, I'm not at the final arc yet, so maybe there's stuff I'm gonna miss out on. The characters do not feel like they have as deep of character arcs and as much change to them as I am used to seeing out of classic Final Fantasy casts.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
I would agree with that. Yep.
Because I think back to 7, 8, 9, you're talking about characters with big personalities, yes, but characters whose big personalities are used to show the way that they change over time and the way they have these big, soaring emotional
Final Fantasy 9, Derek, gets famously dark when you talk about Vivi, who is the cutesiest looking character in the game. So like,
well, but like every one of these games has all these characters who like go through events and change and have to come through like they have heavier arcs, and Fantasian nails the like larger than life character personalities, but it does not do as much with them. And in that way, it feels just a tiny bit more shallow than the games it's pulling inspiration from, despite still being, which sucks because this is not a Sakaguchi problem. Like Lost Odyssey has some of my favorite characters Sakaguchi's ever written. It's not like he lost the sauce when he left Square Enix. Maybe it's just something to do with this game and the specific direction he was going for, which didn't wholly hit for me, but I don't know if I want to hear kind of any other criticisms you guys have.
Mostly just for me, like I started off really loving it, and by the end I liked it. For various reasons, like your mileage will vary, right? Like you know, at first, like because the initial thing that you notice when you first start, in the town of N, I think it's called,
Yeah.
is those incredible dioramas, right? Which like took my breath away. I was like, oh shit, this
Yeah.
is freaking gorgeous. Once the novelty of that wears off, it's a pretty standard turn-based RPG, which is fine. But when you combine that with the kind of like I'm not going to call them completely shallow and one-sided because they're not. But when you compare that, or when you take that and you look at the kind of, they're not one note, but they're not also like super.
I said that they're
characters
closer to
either.
like a Tales of cast in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like, the story is basically, hey, kill God. It's a JRPG. We're gonna kill God. You know, I thought it was a good game, good solid game. I don't think it reinvents the JRPG wheel. I don't think it's the second coming of the genre.
I think it's good,
but it's good.
To be.
No, I don't think it
But
needs
it's
to be. But like a lot of us have been seeing folks who know about this game kind of sell it like it was the second coming.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, yeah. So I
know a few like
some of that.
journalists, writers, reviewers who are like, you guys aren't fucking ready for when this hits consoles.
This is gonna change your life.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, it didn't change my life.
Good.
It was a good game.
Good. It's really good. I enjoy it. I just don't think it was like changing the game necessarily.
Yeah,
and this has been a brutal year for traditional Japanese developed RPGs. Right? There have been so many that have come out this year. So the competition's stiff. But despite that stiff competition, like I still think Fantasian does really, really well and lands, on most merits.
It hits far more often than it misses.
But it's going to hit harder if you have the nostalgia for that era. I don't know what it would be like to be somebody who was not there for Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 and play this game.
That's why I
imagine a lot of the
charm.
charm. Yeah, I imagine a lot of the charm is lost. Maybe.
Well, I mean, but or alternatively, you like it even more because you don't have any preconceived notions of what to compare it to.
There's that.
It's possible.
Right? Because I'm just sitting here talking about how I cannot help but compare the emotional arcs of these characters against the casts of Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, right? Or other games in Squaresoft's PS1 lineup. So, there's a good point there. Overall, I'm very happy with Fantasian Neo Dimension.
Me too.
It's not the 11 out of 10 experience a few people have sold it to me as, and I think maybe the game was done a disservice by people hyping it up that much.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
But I really liked it, and I really want more people to play it.
Yeah.
Especially folks that are in our age ranges who were there for the era we're talking about. But yeah.
No, I thought it was good. Good game.
Well,
I think that's all I got.
I guess not.
Yeah. No.
Finn, what about you, bud?
To say, Finn?
No, I mean that because we don't want to get into like actual story talk.
Correct.
I think that's it. Like I don't want to go. And also at this point, we'd just be kind of talking to talk.
Yeah.
So I think we're good.
Rocking.
Who wants to talk? Who wants to talk, guys? Nobody wants to talk anymore.
Leave me the fuck alone.
You
folks,
said a bad word.
We've said many bad words today, John.
I know.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us for this review discussion. And thank you again to Square Enix for providing us with a couple of review codes and for always helping us out to get access to their titles so we can review them for folks. Remember, you can catch us live Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for SDGC Live, our weekly news show, and other various streams as we find the time for them. Folks, with nothing else, just remember, kindness costs nothing, and take care of each other.